Scorpion vs. Wolf, Mortal Kombat vs. Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice. This is another one that's ranked really well for me in recent years. I think it's made its way into like my top 15 or 20 now, and that is largely due to the Tournament of Champions really popularizing this idea. But I've also just really wanted Scorpion to come back to the show for so long now, without really being in love with much of his major opponents. But this one feels like his best matchup, at least his best popular matchup. There is a lot of style with this one, and way more substance than your average combat-oriented video game matchup, which I really appreciate. I think there's amazing potential for great choreography mixed in with iconic moves from their movesets in visually pleasing 3D. Like, imagine a sick-ass 3D fight with these characters. It'd be so good. And it's also a really good excuse to dive into the lore of the characters, you know, talk about things that maybe the average fan doesn't really know about them. It could really strike that balance of being a combat and character-driven script, and that's awesome. Now, I will say that I'm not usually the biggest fan of immortality debates, so to speak, where the survivability of one or both of the characters is one of the biggest things you have to figure out, but this one's at least a little different because there are genuine questions on both sides of this debate which ask, can either of the characters bypass each other's immortality? Whether or not the answers to those questions favor that idea is something else entirely, but I appreciate that they're there at least. And that's enough to make the immortality aspect of this debate more interesting without being totally annoying, which is how I can see it in some other debates. Again, it's a very case-by-case thing. And I think this matchup is very clearly a hard likely to happen, but obviously not guaranteed. Being on the Tournament of Champions does not mean that the matchup will get an episode, and Death Battle's been using fighting games way less often now, but it still feels like they'd at least consider it. You know, there's popular titles and genres involved, so I'm at least really hopeful for it.